Hi and good evening, everyone. Welcome to the HR Masterclass. So my name is Hina Jithani and I'm a part of the events and community team at Masters Union. So today's masterclass is about how to engage employees and reduce attrition. I think it is one of the most intriguing and interesting topics for all of you. And in this session, the things which will be covered or the topics which will be covered will include some of the factors to keep the employees engaged. What are the causes for high attrition in a company and case studies of most effective practices. So we are very delighted that today we do have Sumedha, Rashmita, and also Archana with us, who will be taking up the session. So yes, I'll start with Rashmita. So we are very again delighted. Rashmita is an HR professional with more than 8 years of experience specializing in performance management and is currently working with KPMG in India as Assistant Manager. Next, we have Sumedha Singh. She is an HR consultant with CIPT level 7 MSc Human Resource Management and is currently working with KPMG in India as Senior Consultant. Over to you, Rashmita and Sumedha. Thank you.
Thank you, Hina. Thanks a lot. Firstly, I would really like to thank everyone for joining us today for this masterclass. Before I get into this very interesting topic which we have today, employee engagement done right, I'm going to start with just an open-ended question, and I would really like if everyone can just be a part, participate as we go along the slides. So the first question that I have is, in one word, describe what employee engagement means to you. If we can have people just answer in one word in the chat box. Employee relations, Gagi says. Recognition. Nice. Really interesting answers. Accountability. Awarding and appreciation. Excellent. Really, really interesting. Healthy work culture. Amazing, guys. Seems like you know what we are going to talk about today. So before I enter into our session, I'll just discuss what the agenda of today's masterclass is. We will be discussing about the neuroscience behind employee engagement before we enter the importance of engagement in the workplace. Then we'll demystify what employee engagement is in the workplace, from how it was traditionally and how is the evolved best practices incorporated by the HR professionals' work to build an engaged workforce. And lastly, we'll discuss the recent trends there are in employee engagement and how and what will be used in the future. So before understanding how is employee engagement done, we will discuss about we will understand what is neuroscience behind employee engagement. So does anyone know what is an amygdala? People who have answered, just want to go back to you and ask you, do you know what an amygdala is? I've also added a picture right in the right side. So I'll just explain. It's the temporal lobe of the center of your brain. And it is also your brain's fear response center. So the term amygdala hijack, which we see on the slide here, is a term given by the psychologist Daniel Goleman in his book, Emotional Intelligence and Social Intelligence. And he coined the term amygdala hijack to describe these types of situations. When we face conflict, we let our instincts take over. So this manifests emotional behavior. Absolutely right, Aman. So when we face conflict, we let our instincts take over, and this manifests as an emotional distress that disproportionates us from the actual situation that we are in. So it's that which we have written here, fight or flight response, that takes over our emotional feelings, and we can also call it the survival mode of a human being. And we usually face it in the workplace a lot of times, and on our day-to-day activity, this is something that day-to-day routine, this is something that we do face, but sometimes we don't realize that this is what we are going towards and this is what we have let go of. One of the examples that I can give of anxiety is giving an example of what an amygdala hijack is and how the flight and fight response take over. Let's say you received an email and you don't know what to do and what response to give, and the anxiety just takes over. So this feeling of your anxiety taking over when all you have to do is reply to an email is what an amygdala hijack is. Another example of fight response is usually when your anger takes over and you're not able to control your feelings in certain situations and you just abruptly respond to something that does not give you a good result. So what does this mean in the business world? There's less control on anger, there's more stress and low confidence in the workplace. We can also say that all of this leads to a very low productivity and low confidence. And basically just people not being engaged in the workplace. The end part, which I would like to highlight here, which is to understand the neuroscience behind employee engagement, we really need to understand how do we control the amygdala hijack. And that is by creating a psychologically safe environment. Rashmita, I would like to give the slide take over to you.
Thanks so much, Sumedha. That was lovely. That was very insightful. Thanks for taking us through that. So team, welcome once again. And let's delve right into the topic once more. So I love trying to break down the hows and the whys of, someone's behaviors and why someone reacts to something and what is the reason, right? And employee engagement or the feeling of engagement is precisely that. It is a reaction that you have to something that someone offers to you, the kind of environment you're in, how you're treated by someone, or what kind of facilities, rewards that you are given at your workplace. All this contributes to your feeling of engagement, right? And with that thought in mind, let me pose a question to you, and I'd love to hear your answers on the chat. All right, so the question is, what do you think is the best predictor of a high-performing team? Or what makes a team perform well at their job? Coordination, yes, that's right. Dynamic teamwork, the work environment, absolutely correct. Team spirit and a sense of understanding, that's right, Gargi, that's right. Communication and having a common goal, very rightly said. Trust is a wonderful word, I love that word. Cooperation and coordination with the team, very rightly said, right? And keep these answers coming. All right, so most of you have given close to the right answer and definitely not wrong, because all of these are very, very important to how a team performs. But the highest predictor of a high-performing team is this. It's psychological safety. Now, to some of you, this word or this phrase may be unheard of, or you may or may not be aware of it. So let me give you a context of why we brought this question here, right? The background to this is there was a specialized project team that was created at a global leading tech company. And they were put together to understand what creates a high-performing team, because naturally the company wants to know how we're going to get the best performers and best teams, right? They examined about 180 teams across their company worldwide, but they were not able to find any common factor. They were not able to attribute high performance to a group of personality types, nor to similar skills, background, or familiarity between teammates. But the one thing that they did find was the best predictor of high-performing teams was psychological safety. Simple, but is it really, right? So what we want to do, we want to understand what psychological safety is. It's something that can only exist in an environment when someone is free to share their ideas, inputs, and everyone is respected and heard by the members of their team without feeling afraid, without being scared that they're going to be judged, without the fear of, thinking that someone's going to make fun of me if I say this. And only when you create that environment can you truly say that there is psychological safety on your team. Their research suggests that a key enabler to team performance is to make your teammates or the entire team feel psychologically safe, to express your ideas, thoughts, and questions freely on the team, with everybody on the team, including your leaders. This project is called Project Aristotle, and you can read about this in detail post the session. There's a lot of insights to be gained from this, right? With that, let's go on to the next slide to understand this a little bit better. So now that we know what psychological safety is or how we can actually define it, I want you to take a couple of seconds and tell me on the chat once again how you, as a colleague, as an individual, or even a leader in your future stead, can create a psychologically safe environment. And again, you don't have to think from the perspective of a leader, because creating psychological safety is everybody's responsibility, right? So what are some of the things that you can do? And I'll give you a couple of seconds to respond, but it's okay if the topic is still relatively new for you. We'll take a look. Meanwhile, Sumedha, let me call on you and ask you what psychological safety would mean to you as an HR professional working in an organization.
Rashmita, as you correctly said, I think feeling safe enough to speak up in a group meeting is something that would actually make me feel like I'm psychologically safe in my workplace. Okay, we have a few answers. I would really like to have a look at those. Dipanshu is saying to give the freedom to put views, doesn't matter their views would work or not.
Absolutely.
Not to judge the answers given by teammates, Kirti is saying, by being vulnerable. Wow.
Amazing. So I think everybody is getting the gist of this idea, which I love. Sumedha, you want to share your experience? You were saying.
Yeah, so I think being able to speak up and rightly mention, be it the right answer or not, but being able to give your own opinion and thought in a place where you're just new or maybe learning is something that would really make me feel confident about sharing ideas and, being included in a group of people.
Perfect. And very right answer. And I think everybody has answered correctly, because psychological safety also comes from a place of personal experience, from how you feel or what someone makes you feel, right? So thanks for that, everybody. And another critical thing that you have to keep in mind here, and because we are talking about engagement, is that the impact of being in a psychologically unsafe environment is massive and can last with an individual for years. And I'd like to be vulnerable enough with all of you today to share my own example, right? This is from a long time ago when I started my first job. We used to have these weekly brainstorming sessions with the entire team present. And these sessions were dominated by the seniors on the team, who were naturally more tenured, more experienced. So you can imagine the kind of courage that it must have taken me as a fresh out of college professional to get a word in and share an idea in this meeting, which I thought added a significant amount of value. But what was I met with when I did that? Complete and utter silence. There was no pushback. There was no acknowledgement, but just plain silence. Now, this may seem like a very small incident, but what did that end up doing? To this day, I still hesitate to be the first one to speak up in a meeting. I'm always waiting for someone else to start, the conversation before I can pitch in. So that's the kind of impact that a single incident can have on an employee. And imagine when you're constantly living in a psychologically unsafe environment where you're, in a team where people don't allow you to speak up, laugh at you, or don't react at all when you share something that is meaningful to you. And as Sumedha rightly explained earlier, when this happens to you, your brain goes into the flight or fight mode. And do you know how much brain capacity being in fight or flight mode takes? It takes 70% of your brain's functioning to just stay in that flight or fight mode, which means if an employee is psychologically unsafe, we are getting only a 30% output in terms of innovation, in terms of creativity that goes towards their job. And when this happens, it's a downward spiral completely. Now, just put this into perspective. You have an organization can have hundreds and thousands of employees. And just imagine when an employee is psychologically unsafe, the tremendous amount of ideas, innovation, and creativity that's not coming out, and the organization is losing out on all that just because an employee is afraid to speak up. Just think about that, right? But coincidentally, what happens when you are in an environment of high psychological safety, it helps to create a sense of belonging for employees, which is what we come to next, right? When they know that they are accepted for who they are, their opinion is valued, employees feel like they are included, employees feel like they are able to learn faster, they're able to learn better, and they are able to contribute to their work, which they think is meaningful. And at the highest level of psychological safety, employees even feel free to challenge ideas that come in or challenge decisions with the intent of coming out to a better decision, not with the intent of creating conflict, right? So that's the highest level of engagement that we would want employees to be at constantly. And once this feeling of belonging sets in, it's always a precursor to high engagement. And that's what we're always striving for. Like the slide says, it's an underlying factor to creating highly engaged employees. All right, so did you know that only 33% of employees are engaged in their jobs today, according to a Gallup survey? And this statistic holds good for across all industries worldwide, 33%. And when you correlate this number to the psychological safety stats that we saw in the previous slide, we are actually losing out on 60% of amazing ideas and innovation as an organization, 60%. But when we have highly engaged employees, what we actually get is high productivity, high profitability, and higher overall business growth. And these are proven stats, which is a tremendous, tremendous impact on your overall business when you're, and this is numerical impact that you see of high engagement. That's why all the more reason for us to learn more about this topic. Certain moments in an employee's lifetime with an organization that are the most critical moments where we can engage them and we can tap into the numbers that we saw previously and actually make a difference to an organization. Much like the smallest of incidents that can make or break our psychological safety from the experience that I shared with you, so can engagement for an employee be impacted by the kind of experiences that they are going through across their journey that you see on the slide here. That's why we call these critical moments that matter, right? So as the life cycle model here indicates, there is no point at which we can sit back and we can stop thinking about engaging our employees, because there's opportunity at every phase of their time with the organization, before the organization, and even after they leave the organization. In fact, there are considerable competitive advantages that you as a business can realize when you have a strategic, comprehensive approach to employee engagement. It starts right from your employer branding, what kind of reputation you're building for yourself in the industry, the experience of the candidates, those who get hired, yes, but even those who don't get hired is something that contributes to how engaged your employees in turn feel. Once the employees are in the system, in the inclusion phase, how comfortable can you make onboarding for the new employee? Do they have the right support and resources? Is the team being inclusive towards them? Is their manager supportive enough? Even the kind of seating, their infrastructure, the kind of tech support, documentation support, their well-being, which is a spectrum in itself, is that being taken care of? Then you'll see whether the employee has access to support groups, something like a women in STEM support group that organizations have, or something like an LGBTQI support group. Even that goes to contributing towards how engaged an employee can feel with an organization. And then we come to the phase of learning for the employee. So this is the phase where employee is understanding, going through their training plan. And here we have to ensure that there's a dedicated training plan created for an employee. There's a development plan that has been communicated by their manager to them. How invested is the manager? opportunity for skill enhancement, opportunities for coaching, mentorship, for job rotations. Again, all these are critical moments. Coming to the growth and collaboration phase, do they have a career path charted for them, which in turn translates to, is the company thinking about me and how I will grow with them? The kind of recognition that the employees are getting, is it timely? Is it fair? Are they getting adequate rewards? Compensation should be at par with market value, if not above. Are they getting the deserved promotions in a timely manner? And finally, how is the experience after resignation of the employee? How seamless was the exit process for the employee? Did they feel excluded or overlooked when they were on their notice period? Post-exit, how responsive is the organization to comply with reference checks for future employers, social media engagement, networking? Everything is an opportunity for us to create high engagement, which is why we say that employee engagement never stops. It's an ongoing process. Okay, so these are some unique initiatives that organizations have adopted to keep their employees engaged. You must be familiar with a couple of them. But an interesting observation here is that some of these initiatives may look like they are for startups, right? Think about bring your pet to work day and so on, where the culture is a tad more informal. But surprisingly enough, a lot of these companies that have enacted these policies and initiatives are coming from well-established firms that you would traditionally associate with more formal working culture, which to me is indicative that there is definitely a shift in the way organizations are adapting and modifying their policies to suit the requirements of the upcoming generation, which is all the more reason for us as budding HR professionals to match this space. So before I hand it back to Sumedha, I now want you to think like the empathetic HR professionals or budding professionals that you strive to be, and answer this question on the chat. What should being truly engaged make you feel like? What I want to know is, what are the emotions that being truly engaged can tap into for an employee of an organization? It can help you be more creative. You get a chance to speak. Absolutely. Okay, so let me help you with a couple of emotions or feelings that you would go through when you are truly engaged, right? You feel challenged enough to take up new responsibilities, take up more challenging work without being stressed out about it, because you are engaged and you find the work that you're doing very meaningful. You inspired to grow within the company. You're inspired to contribute your efforts towards the company. You're excited to work with your team. Every day is not painful. You want to wake up and you want to go to work and you want to contribute. You don't think twice about offering help to your teammates or even reaching out for help to your teammates. And finally, you are extremely proud of the work that you're doing. So all these are what we want emotions to come up from when we engage employees in initiatives, right? And I'm seeing some really good answers here. All of them are very apt. So with that, Sumedha, let me hand it back over to you.
Sure, Rashmita. Now, I think Rashmita has given us some excellent brief on what psychological safety is and how that leads to belongingness and an engaged workforce. We'll just get into this slide where we'll be discussing about the best practices and how the needle has shifted from the traditional best practices to the evolved space of employee engagement. So how does an organization focus on making the workforce more engaged? Well, I think one thing that's rightly said, and many of you must have heard of it, that what has worked yesterday does not always work tomorrow. And in the workplace, this reflects in the pace of change when it comes to driving engagement, and organizations must evolve with the demands of the workforce. So in terms of traditional employee engagement, organizations were more focused on spending money on employee engagement and not focusing on intrinsic motivational and engagement areas. However, the war of talent which is in today's space, leaves traditional employee engagement best practices in the dust. So it's very essential for us to now focus on evolved employee engagement best practices to retain the right talent in the organization. Because as Rashmita rightly mentioned, that the employee engagement phase goes throughout the employee life cycle, and it's a continuous process. So in terms of, if we look at the evolved best practices, autonomy, recognition, collaboration, coaching, belongingness, learning, reskilling, trust, and responsibilities are some of the many spaces where an organization can help an employee feel more engaged in the organization. And this shift is highly important to help organizations fight an uphill battle to drive engagement in the organizations. Also focusing on the different demands of Gen Z and millennials, which Archana, Rashmita, and I were discussing at the very beginning of this masterclass. The evolved best practices are also effective with things like coaching and mentoring, which are much more appreciative to the Gen Z and millennial generations. So coming back to the next slide, we have employee engagement trends for 2023. Now that we have focused and spoken about everything in detail about what employee engagement is and psychological safety is, the first and the most important part is redefining human in HR. So as the latest trends in employee engagement, the employer really needs to focus on redefining the word human in human resources. So more prominence to work-life balance, ensuring the organization is promoting mental health in the workplace and creating an environment of inclusion where the employee feels psychologically safe to not only be included in difficult conversations, but being able to speak up in those meetings equally. A positive ambience can create enthusiasm in employees' work performance, thus leading to a high productive space for the workforce. And making it a people-first culture is highly impactful to delivering really creative and high productivity, like a high productive company. So some of the trends which we can read here, and we have a lot of articles for this as well, which we'll be sharing in our MasterCamp in Human Resource Management, is engaging a hybrid workforce. How do we do that? How do we ensure that people are engaged in a hybrid workforce and not being in a space of not a psychologically safe environment? And how employees are brand ambassadors to the organizations, how employment branding works, ample opportunities for career growth through span of tasks, span of projects, and leading them to and making them work on spaces where they don't have much experience in. Interesting and challenging work, which really helps attract the best talent and ensures that they stay in the organizations for longer. And millennials and Gen Z's friendly employee benefits. Rashmita, would you like to add anything in the slide for the trends and future trends?
I think you've captured what we are heading towards, Sumedha, very well. But one thing that we all need to keep in mind is that engagement really stems from how you make someone feel, how well adjusted you make someone feel. And while it's very difficult to tailor that experience for every individual, we have to be inclusive enough to be able to provide the best sort of experience that we can and fulfill every kind of different need that comes up in an organization. So when you're not doing everything to be inclusive, you are doing something to going out of your way and doing something to exclude, right? So you have to keep in mind that inclusivity or inclusion is the name of the game when you are thinking about your engagement policy, ensuring that your diverse workforce can relate to the kind of policies you have in an organization, be it someone who's at their early career, someone who's mid-career, or even tenured employees. We have to understand what engagement means for them and cater for their different needs. That's all the addition that I'd like to make here.
Agreed, Rashmita. Great point added.
All right, so this one is a thinker for you. Who is responsible for creating employee engagement in an organization? And I am welcoming responses in the chat. But Sumedha, we can also show them what we have on our slide.
Not just HRs for sure. Mansi has said. Okay, team leaders, team managers, HR. Sure, I'll just share what we have on the screen.
Yeah, I'm getting a lot of team leaders, HR, yes. Your colleagues are responsible for employee care teams, absolutely. Supervisors, the employee itself. Wow, I think brownie points to Tejas. We can show them our answer here.
Yeah.
So you are who is responsible for driving how engaged employees are, whether you play the role of an HR, you play the role of a leader, or you play the role of a colleague. It's you who can create that engagement culture in an organization and on your teams. So if you'd like to know more about how you can help to create an engaged workforce, feel free to follow up on the course that we are offering as part of Masters Union, but we'd love to have you there, talk more about it.
The last slide is just us saying a very thank you and thank you for your patience being here.
Thank you so much, Sumedha and Rashmita. I think it was very, very insightful. Even I did type in some answers to just get a feel of it. And no, it was a lot more knowledgeable. So I think the questions that were asked in the chat box, Archana has answered it very beautifully. One of the questions that I'll reiterate for everyone to understand. So is what like, have you conducted any employee pulse check with employees one-on-one connects? And if yes, with which category of employees and how frequently? And what does it include? So Harshal, I think it was a wonderful question. So Archana mentioned that employee pulse check are a regular feature for any organization to check the level of employee engagement. General categories are growth, culture, pay, employee fun activities, managers connect, teamwork, etc. And also with the current trend, most organizations are shifting from once a year to 6 month, even regular service if they launch any policy. Yeah, definitely that helps, Archana. So any jobs that you want to know about in KPMG right now, I think you can go to the job portal and check that out. Also, if you have any further questions or that you could not ask in here or want to know more, please feel free to write it us at MasterCamp Admissions. There is a community, a WhatsApp community that we have just launched, and we will also have a subgroup of HR in that. I'm also posting a link of that. Yes, Dipanshu, I will let you know about the fees of the program. It's 2,45,000 plus GST, which is divided into admission fee, which is 15,000, and tuition fee 2,30,000 plus GST in both of them. So course duration is 6 months, post which you will be eligible for an internship. So yes, the top performers will be eligible to go for an internship with KPMG, depending on the vacancies that we have at that point of time. So the placement, yes, Masters Union do provide you the placement support and assistance after completion of the program, and we will support you on that. So we do have our placements team in place, which will help and support you. So salary, the Dipanshu, would be varied depending on the role, depending on your experience, past experience, your current, what you have learned. And we do have like hands-on experience projects also in this course. So it is weekend course, but we do provide co-working space if required. So Harshal again is asking, so if any one of you would like to take that employee pulse check, can be called as ENPS also.
I'll take that question, Hina. So Harshal, if you can tell me what, are you talking about employee net promoter score? Is that an ENPS stand for, or is this something else? If you can just write it there. Okay. So no, not exactly, Harshal. That is very separate than the overall employee pulse survey. When you talk about net promoter score for an employee, generally that's sometimes done when you're talking about mergers and acquisitions. That's also done when any kind of a due diligence is happening for the organization. That can't be called pulse survey because it is separate than the pulse survey. Pulse survey are the regular feature like I wrote down earlier. And pulse survey is also generally to check the health of the organization. And net promoter score is to check basically how happy or engaged your employees are. Generally, when you are engaging on a larger journey of either getting on or acquiring an organization, nor moving towards a inorganic or an organic growth. So there is a slight difference.
Thank you so much, Archana. Harshal, I hope that answers your question and it is a lot more clear. So before we take off, any signing notes, Rashmita, Sumedha, Archana, if you have, it was wonderful to have you guys. And thank you so much for taking it up.
Likewise, Hina, had a great time. Thank you so much for having us.
Agree, Hina. Thanks so much. I hope we managed to keep everybody engaged. But lovely time, lovely experience. So thanks so much for having us.
Thank you, and thank you everyone for attending it.